Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video for Final Fantasy XIV. This time I wanted to share the recent GamerEscape interview with you and read it out. This is something I thought should be given a look today, as whilst we've heard a ton of information from the many interviews that publications ran with Yoshi P of late, including ones at E3 2019, GamerEscape certainly asks questions that we haven't seen before and actually poses some interesting responses. Obviously, I don't take credit for this interview, and the folks over at GamerEscape, which I'll link to in the description box as usual, have done a smashing job this time around. Go and click that link and show them some love, as they are, at least in my opinion, one of the better outlets of information, and certainly their comprehensive Wikipedia, of which I use all the time, is a godsend. Anyhow, the first question posed to the producer and director of Final Fantasy XIV about the original 1.0 trailer. GamerEscape asks, the Warrior of Light is wearing a kind of generic set of armor. A lot of players are wondering whether we'll ever be able to equip it. Yoshi says that armor doesn't exist in the game files. We actually realized only recently ourselves that we never implemented that gear set in the game. If there is a great demand, we might consider adding it, end quote. I for one would love to see that armor for the nostalgia alone, so hopefully they do it. More glamour the better, really. GamerEscape then asks, from what we've seen, it looks like the majority of Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers will take place on the 1st. Will there be any new content or areas on the source in 5.0? Yoshi explains, once you finish the main scenario quest, the role quest at level 80 will take place on the source. That may be the only content that's going to happen on the source. This was a deliberate choice so that we can have our players concentrate on the realm of the Thirst throughout the main scenario quests in Shadowbringers. If we reveal more, it could potentially spoil the story, so we'll leave it at that, end quote. So quite recently there's been quite a lot of speculation on that exact question, to be honest, which is the reason it was asked here in this interview, I think, and that's about whether the war rages on in the source without us or not. How they plan to convey that turmoil that we've left behind as we travel to another world still remains to be seen, unless they plan to sort of pause time on that storyline or something, but somehow I can't really think that in a real sort of scenario that Xenos Elidibus would just stop and wait for us to come back from our holiday on Novrant, so we'll have to see how they pull that off. GamerEscape next up asks, in the launch trailer, the Warrior of Light is talking to an NPC when he arrives on the 1st, who looks like an NPC we encounter when we first started A Realm Reborn. In brackets they put Brent, Brennan and Bremont here. Is this an Easter egg or something more? Yoshi says this NPC doesn't tie in closely to the narrative per se, but it is something that is there to maintain a sense of consistency in our adventures. As you know, the world was shattered into 14 different shards, including the source about 10,000 years ago. When the world split into the different shards, because it was based off of the same ether, each is a similar realm. So there is a possibility that certain people, while not exactly replicated, will look similar on the different realms. We wanted to depict that in an easily recognizable form, so as we're starting this new adventure in Shadowbringers, we had this NPC show up. This is something that we wanted to incorporate as a reminder that while, yes, you are starting this new important quest, also, hey look, there they are again, so it was deliberate this way. So while they may look similar, they are not exactly the same person who follows the same path. Their fate may be different in the different realms. We wanted to depict that aspect of it as well. You will probably encounter other similar situations with other characters that you come in contact with throughout the story, end quote. So for all of the players out there expecting a dark mode Horschiefant, I don't think it will be quite that simple, or even possible at all. GamerEscape then asks, we have the world visit system now. Are you expecting that to impact early access and the launch of the expansion? Yoshi says it's a pretty massive system that we implemented to be able to world visit, but seeing that there weren't any major bugs and it's running smoothly, we are pretty confident that the framework of it is working properly. That being said, of course, say for example if there's a lot of people on Balmung, you may run into login issues. Because we have the world visit system, we might recommend people to move off of more congested servers to play more comfortably on less congested worlds at launch. There are definitely a lot of people on that particular server, and more people joining as well. So again, we would probably recommend playing on a less congested server if you're looking to play comfortably, end quote. So I guess it really remains to be seen how bad the server issues will be. No doubt massive queues will be the first hurdle, but I wonder if the game will really hold up under the strain, and even if the world visit system will actually work the way they expect it to, or if we get even more issues added on. I mean, hopefully not, but I wouldn't hold your breath for all of this technology to run smoothly in early access at all. I see early access more as a beta test of the actual launch. GamerEscape asks, when an expansion launches, there are multiple instances for each zone to help alleviate the stress. Unfortunately for parties, they will often teleport and get put in different instances, and then have to zone out and back in order to reconnect. Is there any way to have an option to choose which instance to teleport into? Yoshi simply says, we have addressed that, and your party won't be split up. GamerEscape then continue by asking, we know that Ishgard reconstruction is going to be considered crafting and gathering endgame content. Can you elaborate more on what this means? Will it be only level 80? Yoshi replies, first and foremost, how this will be flagged as far as completion will not be by individual players. It will be flagged based on the entire world. The basic concept is going to be that all of the players within a particular world are going to rebuild Ishgard. Of course, you can contribute more if you're a higher level crafter and gatherer, so in that sense you would be able to contribute more. There is also an element, however, where if your character does not have the crafter or gatherer job sufficiently leveled, you can purchase something like a lottery ticket that will help you participate in the reconstruction. Also, as more of Ishgard is reconstructed, there will be festivals that will be held, kind of like a seasonal event, and players can participate in those events to obtain additional rewards. Finally, there will also be a ranking system, where if you're one of the top crafters or gatherers, you will have a title that can be awarded to you, or a tool that you can obtain, sort of reminiscent of the ultimate battle weapons, so that will be an element for the top crafters and gatherers to attempt to achieve as well. GamerEscape then quickly asks on this, is the Ishgard reconstruction available at 5.0? To which Yoshida replies that it will be implemented in 5.1. GamerEscape then asks, is Ishgard housing related to this system? And Yoshi strangely replies, it's up to the players, I think. End quote. Okay, so that's a big chunk of fairly new information. Whilst we already knew from the other interviews and the like that the reconstruction was going to be ranked and server-wide progression, the idea of festivals and small events to take part in, the idea that the server gets a choice in whether there's housing or not, actually confuses me, whether that's a complete misunderstanding of what he meant by that or what, but it's a very ambitious idea, one I think we need to actually see to completely understand. GamerEscape continue regarding housing. Trying to get a plot is very difficult, and it takes a lot of time and is a random element involved because of the timer. Has there been any consideration to change how this system works? Yoshi P says, this system is necessary to address RMT and gold farmers. We want to eliminate issues where they are farming for land as well. And if we were to remove this system, then nobody will be able to buy land properly anymore. We wanted to make it so it's fair to everybody. So yes, luck is involved in that process, unfortunately. But for the time being, we don't have any intentions of changing the system. Also, this is something of a happy problem to have, but there are so many players that are still joining us, so it might be getting to that point when we have to consider adding more plots of land. We'd like to launch Shadowbringers first and let things settle down and monitor how the different servers are populated and make our considerations from there, end quote. So I guess the horrible timer system is here to stay then. The amount of players who have resorted to sort of external macros to record the input of purchasing a house whilst completely away from keyboard is rising. The amount of RMT and scams I see floating around housing is also rising, and it's pretty much exactly because of this timer system. It's not, in my opinion, anyway the best way to do it. I'd probably design it so there was an actual auction aspect to it with bids or something. I don't really know, but there has to be a better way than it currently is. Okay, so GamerEscape switches gears here to talk about the new trust system in Shadowbringers, asking, right now the Shadowbringers trust system is only for one player, but a lot of people regularly play with one other person. Is there a reason why you can't do 2 players with trusts? Yoshi says, with the trust system, one of the main concepts is for our players to enjoy progressing through the main story, and you will start to see this when you play utilizing this system. But it's not just about getting through the story. After we complete the MSQ, we will will still utilize the trust system, and there will actually be a system in which you're raising and growing your NPCs. So if we allowed for multiple players to team up with NPCs, we would need to set up a program to track whose trust belongs to whom, and the growth system gets complicated. Plus, once we allow for preset partial parties, the demand will be there for people who want to go into Duty Finder and be matched up with NPCs, and that gets even more confusing. So we had to draw the line somewhere, so we set it up that either you go solo with your trusts or a party with other players. There's one more major point. Say for example I am going in with 3 other NPCs, all of the NPCs need to keep track of in terms of HP and healing me. If we had a party comprised of 2 players, the AI would need to decide which player they need to prioritize if they were both running low on HP. That adds an extra step the AI has to make a decision on, which will delay their response." End quote. I mean, personally I know pretty much nothing about the coding in particular, but wouldn't the issue about the system keeping track of whose NPC is whose be simply answered by whoever the party leader that queues in is? And then it'd be simply the trust that they own that you go in with. As for the priority of healing between 2 players, wouldn't it be safe to assume that the priority would be anyone lower than 40% health and the tank would get priority first? I don't know. Perhaps I'm underthinking this. GamerEscape's next question then: when designing the content, do you take camera angles into account? For example, in the Titania fight here at E3, during one phase the ad gets quite big and can often block the camera. Is this intended? Yoshi says, with any battle content there are general guidelines about how the camera work will be. The development team tests and plays it, and looks at the angles and makes adjustments. With this example, the intent of that phase is to make sure that your tank is switching over to tank stance and generating the necessary enmity, to make sure they are looking at the big picture. Other than that concept, there is no particular thought put into that phase. Any blocking of the camera is not intentional. As an aside, the fight was actually worse in earlier builds. The team actually called it Titania Ultimate, and you could be knocked off of the platform. We will relay the feedback about the camera angles to the team. GamerEscape then asks, during Las Vegas Fan Festival, there was a battle panel about designing the ultimate battle content, and about how many people watch these battles streamed. Are you taking streaming and viewing into account when designing future content? Yoshi says, we don't take into account the streamability of content. With any content, our policy is for the player's experience to come first, and we do not regularly take into consideration the experience of those watching. We would rather make new content than allocate resources to that. Our policy is to make sure the person playing the content is excited and having fun with the experience. What makes the content fun to watch is when the players are having fun and enjoying the content. With the ultimate battles, these players are so focused on beating the content, they will spend days on the content not eating or sleeping, and so for those kind of things, it does help that there is some drama in those experiences, and people watching that struggle will want to cheer them on because of that drama. It adds to the feeling of being in it together. Perhaps because the ultimate content is being designed by extremely talented designers, they may have been considering more than just the players, but this is not mandated as part of how content is designed. Okay, so we're on to the last 2 questions of the interview now. Has there ever been any talk of a Twitch extension? Yoshi simply says no, we have not had discussions about this. We do not have regular discussions about external tools or software or platforms. There are certain tools that are interesting, so it is not that there is no desire, but there are still a lot of elements we want to work on in-game, and we want to prioritize those. And finally, GamerEscape asks, before Fan Festival this year, there was a lot of information leaked. What was your reaction to that? Yoshida says, generally speaking, leaking information is the worst thing you can do. There are 2 thoughts behind this. With our 3 fan festivals as well as our patch updates, we try to lay out elements that would surprise our players, and we want to bring an encounter that people may not have imagined. It is very important for us to provide that surprise enjoyment, so leaking information is taking that enjoyment and ruining that initial contact and emotion that we want our players to experience. So it is unacceptable and unforgivable. The other reason is, it ruins the efforts of the development team. We have a few hundred people working on this daily, and when a spoiler comes out, it destroys what they have worked for. As somebody responsible for the development team, there are simply no words for me to describe how unfortunate that is. It is extremely frustrating. Square Enix as a whole does its due diligence and investigates all incidents of such leaks. They are taken very seriously." End quote. So there you go, confirmation on what we already knew about leaks being damaging overall. I don't really have much to say on this particular topic. It's something I've seen a lot of people lose their jobs over, and in general it's something that if you do know about, it's best to keep to a small closed off community area or something like that. I'm guilty of getting hyped when I do see a potential leak about a new job or race, for example, but that's something I try to contain private, and obviously I don't make videos on that. It's a very different video game than something like World of Warcraft, for example. Sites like MMO Champion and Wowhead wouldn't be as powerful and successful as they are if it wasn't for their data mining and spoiler discussions, but Square Enix, unlike Blizzard, takes things quite a bit more seriously, and that's for really ultimately them to decide. Either way, a link to this GamerEscape interview will be in the description as usual. Go and give them some love for asking some of the questions that nobody else thought or dared to ask thus far. Enjoy your day, and I'll see you all next time.